Well, welcome. It's great to have you here for this webcast. My name is Jonathan Foust. You are you, and here we are together. This is going to be a short meditation and a talk on the next step of the Eightfold Path on what it means to live with integrity. But before then, some quick thank yous, quick announcements, and we'll move into our meditation. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, and to our producer, Glenn Harrison, for managing all the technical stuff that gets this to you. Also, Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader, who leads mindful movement at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, bringing you right up to now, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Links for her class are on my Facebook page and on my website. I've got a newsletter, a weekly that lets you know what's coming up, and an occasional one with my best photography and compendium of talks and all that good stuff. And let's see, this is all offered freely. I've received so much through this practice of dana, of other teachers offering their offerings completely no charge. The whole idea is that these teachings are considered priceless, so there should be no charge. And so I'm really inspired by that. So it's just blasting out there for anyone who wants. And if you feel like supporting me, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And finally, I've got a July, no, January 17th. I am leading a day-long retreat called The Most Important Thing, which is a day-long retreat dedicated to reflecting on the past year, reflecting on what calls you, and reflecting on how you might move toward what is most important in your life right now. So all of that is there for you. And I think that's the end of the shameless promotion. So we can move into our meditation. You might like to reach your arms up overhead or just stretch out from side to side. Let out any sounds, open your jaw wide. Let yourself settle in for this 12 and a half minute meditation. It's amazing where you can go in 12 minutes. We'll find out. You might like to close your eyes. And you might like to deepen your breath. And for the next, let's say, I'll time you for the next 2 minutes. Let your breath be slow and full and deep. So all of your attention is on your breath. It might be helpful to count to four on the inhalation and then count to four on the exhalation, essentially just matching the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? This is a concentration practice. So when you lose awareness of the breath, come right back to it. The breath is slow and full and deep. Could you relax the breath while simultaneously sharpening your attention to the breath? And over these next few exhalations, how much more can you relax and feel? And now, if you like, release all control of the breath. Let your breath be completely free-flowing and effortless. Feel the effect, the imprint of awareness of the experience of your breathing. You might now sense on the exhalation if it's possible to soften a little bit more on the inside. With the exhalation, what could relax? And you might imagine a flashlight or just awareness from the inside out, feeling your forehead, letting your forehead be smooth. The little muscles around your eyes. And scanning from the inside out now, the muscles of your face, all these micro muscles of your face. What could soften? Could you relax your jaw? Let your jaw soften away from the skull. Could you relax your tongue? Let your tongue fill your lower jaw. And could you soften or relax the base of the skull, right along the occipital ridge? And can you now, from the inside out, feel the shoulders and the weight of the arms? And let your awareness sense down the weight of the arms, down through your elbows, down through your wrists, the backs of the hands, the volume of your palms. Can you feel the space, the volume inside your thumbs and each of the fingers? And you might pause here and just sense from the inside out as you hold awareness in your palms and fingers and thumbs. Is it possible to feel any sense of aliveness here? Pulse, tingling, vibration, subtle energy, warmth. You might now shift your attention to your belly, a little below your navel and in toward the center of your abdomen. And sense if it's possible to hold your attention here and feel everything that's alive. You may feel the movement of breath down deep in your belly. A sense of the space between your navel and your spine. Shifting your awareness down now, can you feel the bowl of the pelvis? The pelvic bone, the floor of the pelvis, the hip joints, sensing from the inside out. And now down the legs, as if you could sense through the center of the bones, down through the knees, down through the ankles, the tops of the feet and the toes, the volume or the space inside your feet. And sensing now the soles of the feet and the heels. And if you rest your attention here, the soles of the feet and the heels, what aliveness can you sense here? Any sense of pulse or tingling, vibration, warmth? As you sense through the whole body now, what could relax or soften or let go? You might now bring your attention to the experience of your breathing. Notice again where you feel the breath the most predominant. Breath is effortless, natural. And notice now over these next few minutes, if it's possible to rest your attention here on your breath. When the mind wanders, simply notice. There's no judgment. Just notice how gently you can escort your attention back to the movement of the breath, to the experience of here and now inside the body. Every time you notice the mind lost in the narrative or the story is a wonderful moment to celebrate. You are once again aware and here. Take your time to escort your attention back to your breathing. Sense how intimately you can feel the movement of the breath. And as you're ready, gently let go of all technique. Just relax and feel. Let your body now begin to move and stretch in any way that feels good for you. Gently now beginning your transition. And welcome back. I was in the Peace Corps in West Africa, in Niger, one of the poorest countries on the planet. It had either the first or second highest level of infant mortality. And one day I was at the marketplace, the Grand Marché in Niamey, the capital city, which was just crammed with vendors and shoppers, and of course, those with nothing who simply survived on handouts from other people. And as I was making my way through the crowd, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around and there was an old man. He had lost his fingers from leprosy, and he had a little bucket hanging from the stump of his thumb. And he looked up, tiny little guy, he looked up at me and he said, Cadeau, cadeau, monsieur, a gift. Do you have a gift for me? And I was I was so horrified to see these hands right in front of my face. And I was shocked and I pulled back and I just said no. And in that micro moment, I'm so aware, it was so seared in my awareness was number one, my aversion and my shock in his eyes. There was some maybe I'm hallucinating, but there was some kind of kindness, some kind of understanding. And he just said, merci. And he turned and he left. And what was so cosmic about that was I went home. I was reading a book by Ram Dass. Ram Dass spent a lot of time in India, and I was reading a chapter on what it's like to be surrounded by more people in need than you can possibly respond to. And he talked about how he noticed that with those who were begging for alms, that there were many young men who were very, very angry about their condition, but there were some older people who just had an incredible wisdom. And he talked about how, again, you have to buy into the whole incarnation thing, but if you wanted to have an incarnation where you had nothing stroking your ego whatsoever, and you could just watch life unfold in front of you, that being in this incarnation of being someone completely dependent on others was a very powerful choice that cultivated deep wisdom. And something struck me about that. And I went back to the Marché many, many times looking for him because I just felt some wisdom from him. And so it's an interesting memory as I'm thinking about this talk because number one was my instant aversion and the no to that request of suffering. And at the same time, his response, which was so filled with equanimity. I'd like to talk a little bit about the quality of heart behind every choice that you make. On the Eightfold Path, one of these paths is what's called right action or ethical embodiment. How your practice moves from sitting on the meditation cushion into your behaviors and into the marketplace, if you will. The Buddha's view is how in ethical behavior, your actions are shaped by non-harming, by compassion, and with integrity. And that becomes the ground for liberation. Non-harming, compassion, and integrity. So through the modern lens, we can say our actions shape our identity. They create a trajectory, and they also condition our nervous system. So I'd like to talk about what it means to live by the principle of non-harming, what it means to bring integrity into everyday life, and how your body serves as an ethical barometer. And finally, a little bit on what it means to take courageous action in a complex world. So non-harming as the foundation. It's that moment when you see someone hurt by your words and feel that contraction in your heart. Abraham Lincoln, in his early years as a lawyer, he was a very, very smart, bright guy. He wrote a scathing letter to a political rival who had publicly mocked him. His wit, of course, was legendary, and he wrote this very sharp, humiliating, and devastating letter to him. And that letter got circulated. And days later, he walked into a tavern and he saw the man reading the letter aloud to friends. But instead of anger, the man simply lowered the paper and said very softly, I didn't think you hated me that much. Lincoln said that he felt it immediately, tightening behind the breastbone, kind of a hot inward collapse. And he realized that he'd wounded someone way beyond what the situation warranted. That night, he wrote an apology, and he always talked to young lawyers that he was training, where he would say, if you resolve to be anything, be kind. We have an impulse. We have the impulse to do harm. We recognize that impulse inside, and it allows us to course correct when we are aware, which is not all the time. So if you think about a time when your body recognized you're doing harm, it's a very powerful tool. And we'll talk more about how your body becomes this incredible mirror for what's happening in the mind. Non-harming begins with attention, just simply noticing. It's not perfection. It's noticing how harming comes from the outside, it comes from the inside. And all we can do is notice it and then come back to our intention, to come back to what's most important. And the more you get sensitized to this, and I'm sure you know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, that when you feel harm, it collapses the heart. Awareness is the process of reopening it. So every moment is the possibility of resetting your heart. Non-harming isn't passive. It's a very powerful form of protection. Because from non-harming, we turn to integrity, which is the intention and the action that arises when your heart sees more clearly. There's a Zen phrase that says, the most honest person is the one who knows where their feet are. Let me read that again. The most honest person is the one who knows where their feet are. Self-awareness. There's a story in a Zen monastery of a young monk who was cleaning the kitchen and he accidentally dropped this ceremonial bowl, like the ceremonial bowl, and it shattered. And he was terrified. He swept up the shards, he hid them, and he felt sick all night. He wasn't able to meditate, he couldn't sleep. And the next morning, the abbot just casually asked, have you seen the ceremonial bowl? And the monk bowed deeply and he finally spoke the truth. He said, I broke it and I was afraid to tell you. And the abbot nodded and said, things break. What matters is that we don't break our integrity. That monk later described a profound release, like a knot in his chest dissolving. And other monks said they felt relief too. His honesty created an atmosphere where mistakes were safe to acknowledge. We hold so many secrets inside. And as I like to say, sometimes ad nauseum, what you can't communicate controls you. There can be so much relief when you tell the truth. I ran across this story in a suburban neighborhood. Everyone was just baffled and freaked out because every few days, someone's yard would show these strange circular patches where the grass had been flattened. And people were speculating, was it teenagers? Was it aliens? What was it, pranksters? And they called an HOA meeting. And this went on and on for quite a while. And finally, during a Saturday gathering, this elderly neighbor raised his hand and he said, it's me. It's me. I got a metal detector. I tested at night because it bothers my eyes. The sun bothers my eyes. I didn't realize I was leaving rings on everyone's lawn. So everyone burst out in laughter, and weeks of suspicion evaporated. And someone offered to help him adjust the detector. Someone else volunteered to set up reflective markers for his nighttime wanderings. And the man just said after all that, he said, I thought you'd all think I lost my mind. And the basic response was, we're just glad it's not aliens. So, telling the truth. And you may recall a moment when telling the truth kind of realigned your whole being. I hope you've had an experience like that. Mark Twain famously said, the wonderful thing about telling the truth is you never have to remember what you said. Some deep dharma in that line. Because integrity generates a deep inner simplicity. And the interesting thing is, we know when we're out of alignment. Our body knows when we're out of alignment if we're listening to the body. And when you're committed to telling the truth, it's a form of protection because it protects your mind from agitation. So integrity is not about being good. It's about being whole. And wholeness becomes accessible when you are more and more and more in tune with the body's wisdom. And this is the piece I find so interesting. The more you become mindful, the more you necessarily have to rely on the body as your tool because the body doesn't live in the future, the body doesn't live in the past. So the more you become sense-based, the more you come into the present moment. And then the question is it possible that the body doesn't lie, that the body is giving you signals all the time? And the more you naturally tune into those signals of the body, the more your kinesthetic intuition comes alive, and the more you feel directed from kind of this mysterious source of what we call the felt sense. How your body holds your life experience. And the more we can tune in to what our body is telling us, the simpler things get. There's a story in this old Indian village. There was an Ayurvedic physician who he walked with a little pain on his right side for weeks. And he discussed it as too much vata. If you know, familiar with Ayurvedic medicine, too much vata is like there's just he needs to rebalance. Too much air and ether. And he kept working, treating dozens of patients a day. And one afternoon, while preparing a bowl of rice, he got a sharp spasm and doubled him over. And he sat on the floor and breathing and realizing this pain was unlike anything he'd ever felt before. When he finally placed a warm compress on his belly, something he had told his patients to do forever, his body softened and some tears came and the pain eased. And he felt this enormous, like inner yes, as if his whole system had been waiting for him to stop and listen. And that experience shifted his teaching. And he began telling his students this. It's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. He says, the body whispers, and then it speaks, and then it shouts. Wisdom is hearing the whisper. The body whispers and then speaks and then shouts. Wisdom is hearing the whisper. If we could just tune ourselves in to catching the whisper, how much suffering might we avoid? So many of us have had a sense of no, but we override it. I've mentioned this before many times, but when someone tells me they're getting divorced, I can't help myself, but I ask this question. When did you first know the relationship wasn't going to work? I'd say it's between 80 and 85% of the time, people will say, I know in the beginning. That's quite amazing. Something in us knows, but then we override it. And this is the practice. Your body is there as a tuning fork. to guide you into feeling more whole, feeling more integrity. So if you like, you might close your eyes. Little Zen pop quiz. If you like, you can slow down your breath. And if you just sense inside, where inside do you feel your body aligned? What feels free flowing? What feels peaceful? Now, what inside feels misaligned? Is there anything inside that feels tight or congested or stagnant or just not flowing? Anything that feels painful, unpleasant? And just for a few moments, what happens if you stay with the that felt sense of discomfort? Let it know you see it. What happens if you hold it in some quality of kindness or compassion, as if you are holding a child who doesn't have words? If you like, you can deepen the breath, and if you like, you can open the eyes. It's really interesting because we think of integrity as our actions. But if we track down our actions, actions are usually preceded by a thought, which are preceded by intention, which are preceded by something inside. Somatic cues precede conceptual clarity. What you feel generates a thought, generates a belief, generates intention. And embodied awareness supports ethical clarity. It's just an interesting thing that your nervous system kind of calibrates to your intentions. If there's an intention to self-protect, an intention to do harm, you will feel it on the inside. If there is an intention to do no harm, an intention to be truthful, it's a completely different felt sense inside. So ethical actions begin with body-based listening. As one teacher said, your body is the most honest spiritual friend you have. The challenge, of course, is to learn how to listen inwardly and then how to expand outward in courageous, compassionate engagement. So then the question becomes, how do you take action in a complex world? How do you make the difficult choices that affect others? There is a classic vow in classic Buddhism. It's the vow of the Bodhisattva to relieve suffering regardless of difficulty. When Tara and I got married, we incorporated the Bodhisattva vow into our lives. This is how we phrased it. May whatever arise serve the awakening of heart and mind and be of benefit to all. Countless times when I've been struggling, I fall back on that. Whenever I'm struggling, I'll just simply use the phrase, may this serve awakening. And just in that, may this serve awakening, there's this internal reframe for me. Is there someone you know right now who might be isolated? Someone you know who's struggling or hurting right now? If you just imagine reaching out to them to let them know you're thinking about them, what felt sense forms as you reflect on that? Are there any courageous actions that are quietly asking for your attention right now? Is there anyone in your life who has an unmet need that you might reach out? Ethical action is deeply personal. It's not prescriptive because it has to come from deep inside you and feel aligned. The courage that you may have to speak up on behalf of others, it must arise from clarity and not from aggression. It has to arise from compassion. Compassion becomes your guide in risk taking. I know a lot of very angry activists, and you have a certain degree of effectiveness in generating anger. That's how many of our elections run. One side gets a little more angry than the other, and they win the election. But clarity and compassion, you have a different quality of effectiveness, I think. There's so much to say about courageous action in a complex world because we are in deep, deep complexity right now. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by the challenges on the planet right now. But I think it's important to really reflect on how the smallest acts ripple outward. If there's someone you know who's hurting or could benefit from you reaching out, that one act generates other acts. How can it not? So cultivating courage is the natural expression of steadiness, a steady ethical heart. It circles back the whole path we're walking. Ethical conduct, when you are living in alignment, it stabilizes your mind and it opens your heart. And as I like to say, my definition of the path of your personal dharma is what you can't not do. Of all the options in the world, what is it, that one thing that when you really get down to it, it's kind of choiceless choice, kind of has your name on it. So a question before we close. You might close your eyes just for a moment and reflect on the relationships in your life. Reflect on those you work with, those you serve with. What is the next wise action your heart already knows? What expression of non-harming, of integrity feels right for you right now? Is there one thing calling you? Maybe, maybe not. If you like, you can open your eyes. When it comes to right action, there's a little checklist. The first is, am I cultivating non-harming? Are my actions a contribution? The second is about integrity. Is what I'm doing aligned? Does it feel right? Which leads to the third, is this embodied listening? Does this feel like a yes? And it's very interesting because sometimes initially it doesn't because there's fear. Confrontation involves fear, but when you really listen, behind that is whatever you may need to step forward, to move forward in a way that's engaged and courageous, non-harming, integrity, inner alignment, that alignment feeling somatic, and then engagement. So perhaps there's one action in these next few days, small, concrete, kind, that might be an expression of your deepest intention. May you feel aligned and may you feel courageous in a world that needs you and is calling you. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. I hope this was some support and many, many blessings in your practice and in everything that calls you.